There are quite a few objections to the historicity of Jesus. There are lots of different claims, but here are 5 of the most common. First is that Jesus' historicity is disputed. Despite some claims to the contrary, the historicity of Jesus is assumed by virtually every scholar in the Western world. You'll hear some people say that the evidence for Jesus isn't very compelling, but the people who say this are almost never historians, classicists, or scholars of antiquity. In other words, the people saying this are the least qualified to speak to the existence of Jesus. Second, the Gospels are biased. Anyone making this argument knows little to nothing about history writing because every writer is biased. No author, ancient or modern, who composes a historical account can be perfectly objective. It isn't humanly possible. So yes, the Gospel writers were biased, just like every other writer, including the critics who question the Bible's reliability. But this claim does absolutely nothing to undermine the credibility of the Gospels and their portraits of Jesus. Third, contemporary writers fail to mention Jesus. This is one of the most popular arguments against the historicity of Christ, but it's also one of the worst. Of the many dozens of famous writers around the first century, they wrote almost exclusively on topics that had nothing to do with anything remotely connected to Jesus. These writers produced travel guides, geographical texts, and works of literature. The few historians in this group wrote about events from different periods of time, or events from the same time but different parts of the Roman Empire. You could argue that not a single contemporary of Jesus produced anything where it would have been natural to mention him. Fourth, there's no archaeological evidence for Jesus. This is a terrible objection, mainly because anyone making it simply doesn't know very much about how archaeology is done. Archaeological evidence from any time period is going to be very limited, especially if you're looking for evidence connected to just one person. If that person isn't someone of significant political power and social influence, the chances of finding any evidence for them is remote. Jesus didn't leave behind any inscriptions, works of art, or building projects, just like the other 99.99% of people in history. Finally, Jesus was a mythical character. Lots of critics like to claim that the church borrowed stories about Jesus from ancient mythology and that he never existed. No reputable scholar anywhere in the world actually believes this, though. It's a fantasy based on bad scholarship and a dishonest manipulation of ancient evidence. Although people have tried to dismiss Jesus as a fictional or mythical creation of the early church, their arguments just aren't credible.